What would you do if a single tap on a screen, something as innocent, as effortless, as instinctive as breathing, was enough to detonate your entire marriage? Imagine waking up one morning to discover that the person you trusted, the person you built a life with, had secretly been engaging with someone you see not just as a rival, but as the one person whose very existence threatens your identity, your relevance, and your place in the world. Now imagine that this someone wasn't a stranger or an ex or a flirt from the past, but your sister-in-law, a woman you've spent years quietly competing with, measuring yourself against, comparing your public image to. And imagine that this one tap, happened not on your husband's public, polished account, but on a hidden, secret, carefully curated burner profile that you never knew existed. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. That's where our story begins. Not with an affair, not with a scandalous DM, not with midnight phone calls or confessions or suspicious text messages. It all begins with a secret Instagram account and a photo of Kate Middleton. Now, before you think this is exaggerated tabloid drama or the kind of wild rumor the internet likes to spin for fun, ask yourself this. Why is it that the smallest actions, the quietest missteps, often reveal the deepest truths? Why do the things we try hardest to hide end up being the things that expose everything we fear most? And why is it that, for Harry and Meghan, something as small as a double tap carries the weight of their entire unraveling? Because this wasn't just any photo, it wasn't just any event, and it wasn't just any moment. It was the Royal Variety Performance 2025. The night Kate Middleton stepped back into the public eye after months of silence, speculation, and global curiosity. The night she delivered not one, not two, but three show-stopping looks that had the world gasping, praising, comparing, and whispering. The night William and Kate re-emerged as the calmed, collected, quietly powerful duo that many claimed the monarchy desperately needed again. And Harry saw it. He saw all of it. He saw the photos, the elegance, the confidence, the effortless grace that Kate carried even through the shadows of her own challenges. And for reasons only he understood in that moment, he liked it. Literally, digitally, emotionally. He tapped, on a photo of Kate's outfit, an outfit that represented something much deeper than fashion. That outfit represented stability, royalty, respect, authority, things Meghan, at that moment in her life, felt slipping through her fingers. So why did Harry like that photo? Was it nostalgia? Admiration? Sympathy? Was it a subconscious longing for the family he left behind? Was it an emotional reflex he didn't realize still lived inside him? Or was it something darker? Something he never spoke aloud? These questions began swirling the moment Meghan discovered that secret account. An account she wasn't supposed to find, wasn't supposed to search, wasn't supposed to even know existed. And yet she did. And when she did, the reaction wasn't just anger. It wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't even betrayal. It was volcanic. Something erupted inside her, a mix of humiliation, disbelief, and a fear so sharp it cut through every barrier she had spent years building around herself. Fear of being replaced. Fear of being overshadowed. Fear of losing control of the narrative she worked tirelessly to protect. And from that fear came a threat Meghan never imagined would leave the walls of their Montecito home. A threat so chilling that even Harry didn't quite process what he had just heard. A threat that would send shockwaves through not just their household, but through palace security, public relations teams, and ultimately, through the entire royal family. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't an argument. This wasn't a marital disagreement gone wrong. This was something darker. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's rewind the clock just a little. The days leading up to the Royal Variety Performance are where the tension truly began. Meghan had been under pressure, intense pressure. Her brand deals were shaky. Her public appearances felt forced. Her interviews had grown increasingly scrutinized. Nothing she touched seemed to land the way it used to. And to make things worse, whispers had started circulating that Kate's return to public life would overshadow everything Meghan had been doing in America. Meghan feared the comparison. She feared the spotlight shifting. And above all, she feared that Harry still held emotional ties to the family she had spent the last 4 years trying desperately to detach him from. So when Kate stepped out at the Royal Variety Performance looking poised, radiant, and surprisingly strong, despite months of health rumors. Meghan knew what the headlines would say. She knew the internet would rave. She knew that this was the narrative pivot the monarchy had been waiting for. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't predict, was that Harry himself would contribute to that narrative. A single like, a hidden account, a moment of weakness, a moment of honesty, a moment of old memories resurfacing. No one knows the exact thought that went through Harry's mind when he tapped that heart icon. But what we do know is that it sent Meghan spiraling into a storm of suspicion strong enough to shatter the thin peace holding their marriage together. And the worst part? Harry didn't immediately realize he'd been caught. He didn't check his messages. He didn't check his notifications. He didn't check Meghan's mood as she walked around the house with the kind of stillness that meant something was very, very wrong. He was oblivious. Until he wasn't. Because the moment Meghan confronted him, the moment she held out her phone with the burner account displayed on the screen, the temperature in that room dropped. Harry felt it in his chest. Meghan felt it in her bones. It wasn't just the secret account. It was what the account revealed. The late-night scrolling. The searches. The follows. The comments he forgot to delete. The photos he saved. The quiet engagement with Kate-related content. Far more than anyone expected. And for Meghan, it all pointed to one thing. Harry missed them. Harry watched them. Harry still cared. That realization didn't just hurt her, it terrified her. And that terror is what triggered the threat. The one line that echoed through the hallways, through the staff, through Harry's memory, and eventually, through the royal family itself. But what did she say? What exactly were the words that left her mouth? What was the line that changed everything? We're almost there. But to understand the weight of that moment, you need to understand the emotional fault lines beneath it. Because this wasn't about Kate. This wasn't about Instagram. This wasn't about a photo or a like or a secret account. This was about identity, control, competition, fear, resentment. A marriage built on running from the monarchy suddenly colliding with memories of what Harry once had, and what Meghan feared he might secretly want back. And what happened next inside that home is something even Meghan couldn't predict. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What came next wasn't shouting, it wasn't rage, it wasn't the explosive confrontation most people imagine when they think of Meghan and Harry in crisis. No, what came next was silence, a heavy, suffocating, electric silence that filled the room like smoke in a house fire. You know that kind of silence, don't you? The kind that doesn't calm anything, but warns you something is about to break. The kind that makes your heartbeat suddenly sound too loud in your own ears. The kind that tells you you're standing in the exact center of a storm that hasn't even revealed its full power yet. Harry felt it. Meghan felt it. Even the walls felt it. And that silence is exactly where everything began collapsing. Because silence is where truth hides, and where fear grows, and where the worst thoughts become the loudest. Harry watched Meghan pace toward the doorway, her fingers trembling just enough for him to notice, her breathing just sharp enough to betray the fury she was trying to swallow. She wasn't someone who lost control immediately. She wasn't impulsive. She was strategic, calculated. But right then, strategy had evaporated. Something more primal had taken over. And Harry, for the first time in a very long time, felt a kind of fear he couldn't quite name. Not fear of Meghan hurting him. Not fear of a physical altercation. No, this was fear of something deeper. Fear of what she might say. Fear of what she might do. Fear of what she might expose. Because when someone feels their identity slipping, when their public image feels threatened, when their control over the narrative cracks, they can become unpredictable in ways that stun even themselves. Meghan turned back toward Harry with a look that wasn't loud, but carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid accusations. And then, in a voice colder than anything he expected, she asked him the one question that flipped everything upside down. Do you miss her? No build-up. No hesitation. Just that. Direct. Piercing. Dangerous. And Harry's silence, the hesitation, the shock, the confusion, was all the answer she needed. Even though he didn't intend it that way. Even though the truth was tangled, emotional, complicated. Even though the question itself was impossible to answer cleanly. In that moment, Harry realized something terrifying. Meghan didn't believe he liked the photo accidentally. She believed he liked it deliberately. She believed it meant something. She believed he had feelings he never admitted. And the more he tried to explain, the more she spiraled, because explanations sound like excuses when someone has already decided the meaning of your actions. And here's where the tension breaks open even wider. Meghan wasn't jealous of Kate. Meghan was jealous of the world Kate represented for Harry. The stability, the structure, the sense of belonging, the clarity of identity, the heritage, the duty, the purpose, the family. Meghan felt perpetually compared to Kate, even when no one was comparing them. She carried the pressure of expectation, the weight of scrutiny, the sting of criticism, much sharper in her world than in Kate's, because Meghan had no institution to shield her. And Kate's reappearance at the Royal Variety performance wasn't just a public event. It was a reminder that Meghan's chapter as the global center of royal fascination was closing. Or, worse, had already closed. So when Harry liked that photo, it wasn't a like. It was betrayal. It was disrespect. It was humiliation. It was proof, at least to Meghan, that she had been replaced in the eyes of the very man who promised to choose her over everything else. That's when the threat came out. Not shouted, not screamed. It slipped out like venom from a snake. Quiet, precise, poisonous. Meghan leaned forward, her voice low enough that Harry almost thought he misheard it, and said something that froze him. "If you ever embarrass me like this again, I swear I'll end your life." Now let's pause here, because the instinct many people have is to downplay statements said in anger. You've probably heard couples say things they don't mean. You've probably said things you wish you could take back. But this wasn't one of those moments. This wasn't impulsive or sloppy. This wasn't a careless insult thrown in a heated argument. Meghan's tone wasn't chaotic. It was controlled, focused, terrifyingly clear. She meant for Harry to hear it. She meant for it to sting. She meant for it to feel like a line you don't cross. Because in Meghan's mind, the threat wasn't violence. The threat was consequence. The threat was destruction of Harry's reputation, his legacy, his mental stability, his emotional safety, his ability to function in the world without her. She wasn't saying she'd literally kill him. She was saying she would annihilate him in the ways only someone who knows your soul can. But here's the twist. Harry didn't hear it that way. Harry has lived through trauma. He has lived through loss. He has lived through instability, through chaos, through a childhood where raised voices and emotional explosions were normal. So when Meghan said those words, Harry didn't interpret them as metaphor. He interpreted them as threat. Real threat. Immediate threat. And that difference, that gap between intention and perception, is what sent everything spiraling out of control. Because Harry panicked. His hands shook. His breath caught. His mind flashed back to images of his mother, of her fears, of her warnings, of the dangers of emotional warfare. He saw everything all at once. And instead of arguing back, instead of confronting the threat, instead of defending himself, he did the one thing Meghan didn't expect. He walked out. He didn't scream. He didn't defend. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just left. And that, ironically, made everything worse. Meghan wasn't prepared for that reaction. She wanted a fight. She wanted him to reassure her. She wanted him to deny, to explain, to plead, to convince her that she was still the center of his world. But when he left, she felt abandoned, the exact wound she had spent her entire life trying to avoid. And abandonment flips a switch in Meghan every single time. She went from accusatory to terrified, from angry to frantic, from controlled to chaotic. And the next thing she did changed the entire trajectory of the next 12 hours. She made a phone call. A phone call she would deeply regret. A phone call that was recorded. But what was in that call? Who was on the other end? What did she reveal? And how did that single decision pull William, Kate, and the entire palace into a private explosion they never expected to be pulled into? This is where the story gets darker. Because Meghan didn't just call a friend. She didn't call a therapist. She didn't call an assistant. She called someone in London. Someone connected. Someone who had ties close enough to the royal family that what she said traveled faster than she intended. And what she said wasn't filtered. It wasn't softened. It wasn't strategic. She unleashed. She vented. She panicked. She cried. She threatened to ruin Harry, to expose him, to make sure he'd never be taken seriously in the UK again. She said things that, taken out of context, sounded unhinged. And taken in context, they were even worse. And that entire call, Every word was recorded by the person on the other end. Within 45 minutes, that recording made its way to someone who should never have heard it this early. William. Imagine William's face when someone in the palace, someone who handles sensitive information, sent him a message that said, "You need to listen to this immediately." Imagine the confusion turning into disbelief, the concern turning into anger, the protective instincts turning into something more primal. Because William wasn't just hearing a marital argument. He was hearing a threat against his brother. And for William, family comes before everything, even before duty. But it wasn't William's reaction that mattered most. It was Kate's. Because Kate, who normally stays out of Harry and Meghan's drama, asked to hear the recording too. And when she did, something in her expression changed. Not anger, not fear, not surprise. Something quieter, something colder, something that felt like, "I knew this day would come." And it's at this point, this exact moment, that Kate asks a question that sends a chill through everyone in the room. Where is Harry now? Because Meghan's threat was bad. The recording was worse. But what late-night staff discovered next was the real turning point. Harry had disappeared. No phone, no bag, no security detail, nothing. He walked out of the house and vanished for 11 hours. And those 11 hours would open a chain of events no one, not Meghan, not Harry, not William, not Kate, was prepared for. Because Harry wasn't alone, and the person he was with is the last person anyone expected. Have you ever wondered what a person hides when the world thinks they've already revealed everything? When someone has been interviewed, analyzed, photographed, judged, praised, criticized, loved, and hated so publicly that you assume there's nothing left to uncover. But what if the real secrets, the ones that matter, are the ones they never speak about, the ones even their partner doesn't know exist? Because that's exactly what Harry's life had become. A man who left the royal family to reclaim privacy, secretly living an online life no one around him could trace. Not Meghan, not his team, not the tabloids, not even the digital investigators who spend their days tracking celebrity activity across burner accounts. Harry was invisible online, hidden behind a username no one would ever associate with him, a profile with almost no posts, no selfies, no betrayals of identity, nothing but curated anonymity. And that's where the unraveling begins, because the more invisible you try to be, the more dangerous your digital footprints become. Harry's burner account wasn't just a place to look at photos. It was an escape, a sanctuary, a space where he could scroll without being judged, watch without being watched, and observe a world that no longer belonged to him but still tugged at his heart. He followed wildlife pages, surfing accounts, vintage motorbike restorers, a couple of comedians, a dog rescue organization in Kenya, things he loved, things he missed, things that made him feel normal. And then, hidden among those harmless follows, were the ones he tried the hardest to forget he'd followed. A few royal reporters, a fashion analyst, a photographer who specialized in royal events, and a single, discreet, carefully curated account dedicated to Kate Middleton's public appearances and style evolution. Not a fan page, not a gossip page. A simple, tastefully run profile that posted elegant, neutral commentary on Kate's outfits, public speeches, charity engagements, and event looks. The kind of account you'd scroll through not for drama, but for quiet admiration. And Harry followed it. Secretly, quietly, consistently. Why? That's the real question. Because Harry never spoke about Kate anymore. He avoided her in interviews. He sidestepped questions about their relationship. He deflected, redirected, or refused to answer when journalists pressed him. But silence doesn't mean indifference. Silence can be longing. It can be regret. It can be unresolved affection. Not romantic affection, but the deep, familial, complicated kind that comes from knowing someone for decades and suddenly being worlds apart. So maybe he followed that account because he missed her. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was closure he never received. Or maybe, and this is the part no one likes to admit, maybe he wanted to see who Kate had become without him. And nothing revealed that more powerfully than her return at the Royal Variety Performance 2025. The night Kate stepped out in that midnight blue gown, the internet exploded. Twitter, TikTok, Threads, news outlets, photographers. Everyone had something to say, and Harry saw every bit of it. He scrolled through 100 posts, 1,000 comments, dozens of pictures, pausing at the one shot that would ignite the single biggest fight of his marriage. It was a photo of Kate turning slightly as she walked, light hitting her gown just right, her smile soft, her posture poised, her expression serene, not glamorous in a flashy way, but effortlessly regal, the way only someone who carries duty in their bones can look. Harry stared at that photo longer than he should have. 2 seconds became 5. 5 became 10. His thumb hovered over the screen. Maybe he hesitated. Maybe he didn't. But eventually he tapped the heart. A tiny, innocent double tap. Something millions of people do without thinking. But Harry isn't millions of people. Harry is Harry. And a double tap from him, even from a hidden account, carries the weight of years of unresolved emotion. Now here's where the story takes a turn. Harry didn't know that Instagram had recently rolled out a glitch. A bug affecting some private accounts where likes momentarily appeared attached to the user's main, public identity before syncing back to the burner profile. It happened fast. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Too fast for most people to notice. Too fast for the world to catch it. But not too fast for one person. Meghan. Now, was she snooping? Was she checking his activity? Was this part of her routine digital monitoring? No one knows the full truth. But what we do know is that Meghan had previously linked her phone to Harry's primary account for safety verification and two-factor authentication. That meant any temporary activity, even glitches, pinged her device. So when Harry double-tapped Kate's photo, Meghan's phone lit up for a brief second with a notification that made no sense. Prince Harry official liked a post. A second later, the notification disappeared. But the damage was done. Curiosity replaced confusion. Suspicion replaced curiosity. Fear replaced suspicion. And fear, left unchecked, transforms into obsession. Meghan opened Harry's app. Nothing. She opened his following list. Nothing. She opened his liked posts. Nothing. But there it was. The glitch had left a trace in the cache. An invisible breadcrumb pointing to the photo he had interacted with. And when Meghan clicked it, she was greeted by the sight of Kate Middleton in that blue gown. Elegant, glowing, the embodiment of everything Meghan felt the world denied her. And in that moment, something snapped. But here's where it gets even deeper. Meghan didn't stop at the photo. Her curiosity became investigation. She accessed Harry's phone. She searched for secondary accounts. And she found it. Not immediately, not easily, but Meghan is someone who doesn't stop when she feels a threat. She checked save passwords, email traces, browser autofill, old app logins, and there it was. The burner, a username Harry thought no one would ever decipher. A profile picture of a wave hitting a cliff. 3 followers, 10 followings, no posts, no bio, no identity clues. But the content he viewed? That was enough. Meghan opened the following list, and her entire body tightened. Wildlife, motorbikes, a few comedians. That was fine. Then she saw it. The Kate page. Followed. Engaged with. Consumed frequently. And as she scrolled, she saw something worse. The burner had liked multiple posts about Kate over the past year. Her hospital appearance. Her charity speech. Her family outing with the children. Even a throwback video of her laughing during a royal engagement years ago, a moment Harry had been standing right next to her in real life. To Meghan, this wasn't nostalgia. This was proof of betrayal. Because here's the contradiction that haunted Meghan. She didn't want Harry to love the royal family, but she needed him to resent them. His resentment was her security. His distance was her stability. His disconnection was her identity. So for Harry to be secretly admiring anything related to Kate, publicly or privately, felt like abandonment. Meghan sat there for almost 10 minutes, staring at the phone, her breath sharp, her chest trembling, her mind racing ahead of logic. She wasn't thinking like a spouse. She was thinking like someone fighting for survival. Survival of her public image, survival of her narrative, survival of her marriage. So she stormed into the room where Harry was sitting on the couch, half distracted, half tired, unaware of the emotional earthquake heading straight for him. She didn't shout. She didn't slam the phone. She didn't accuse. She simply held up the device and asked the one question that could shatter any man. Who is she to you now? Harry froze. Not because he was guilty, because he was confused. Because he didn't understand how she knew. because he didn't have a prepared answer for a question he never imagined he would have to answer. And his silence, which was simply shock, became interpreted as admission. Meghan's breathing grew heavier. Her eyes darkened. Her voice dropped dangerously low. Then she asked another question. Do you still want her? This time, Harry attempted to respond, but the damage had already been done. His delay, a fraction of a second, was all Meghan needed to rewrite the entire story in her mind. And then Meghan said the line that would echo into the night. The line that would be repeated in a phone call, recorded on the other side of the world, replayed by William, analyzed by Kate, and eventually whispered about inside palace walls. If you ever humiliate me like this again, I will end your life. Not shouted, not screamed, whispered, sharp, precise, a threat and a warning wrapped into one. Harry felt his stomach drop. His chest tightened. His mind spiraled. He looked at Meghan as if seeing a stranger. And that's when he made the choice that sent everything spiraling even further. He stood up and walked out the door. No jacket, no phone, no plan. He vanished into the night, gone for 11 hours. And he wasn't alone, because the person he met during those missing hours is the very person who would become the key to exposing everything that happened next. And that's where the story takes a turn so shocking, so unexpected, it will redefine everything you think you know about the night Meghan threatened Harry. What happens in a house when the person at the center of the storm suddenly walks out? Everything changes. The temperature drops. The walls feel tighter. The silence becomes deafening. And the person left standing in the middle of it, Meghan, in this case, becomes flooded with a cocktail of panic, rage, confusion, and humiliation that no one around her could calm down. Because when Harry walked out of that Montecito mansion, Meghan didn't just feel abandoned. She felt exposed. She felt powerless. And if there's one thing Meghan has never tolerated, not in Hollywood, not in the palace, not in their marriage, it's the feeling of losing control. Imagine her standing there in the living room, phone still in her hand, her heartbeat slamming against her ribcage like a warning alarm. One moment she was confronting him. The next, he was gone, slipping into the night without a word, without an explanation, without giving her the chance to regain the upper hand. And for Meghan, power in the conversation wasn't a preference, it was survival. When she lost control, she lost her sense of self. And that fear is exactly what triggered the meltdown that would soon echo across the property, loud enough for staff, neighbors, and even nearby security to hear. At first, Meghan tried to remain calm. She told herself Harry would return in 10 minutes, maybe 15. She told herself he simply needed air, space, time to think. But the longer the silence stretched, the more her thoughts twisted into darker and darker interpretations. Had he gone to call someone? Was he meeting someone? Was he planning to leave her? Was he running back to the very world they had burned bridges from? Every new thought was worse than the previous one, and each one dug deeper into her sense of insecurity. She replayed the image of Kate's picture on Instagram. She replayed the notification that flashed onto her device. She replayed the burner account she shouldn't have found. She replayed that, symbol, and then she replayed Harry's face. The shock, the hesitation, the silence when she asked if he missed Kate. The more she relived it, the more emotional gasoline she poured on her own fire. And then, after 9 painfully long minutes, the meltdown began. Not a slow, building cry, not a moment of quiet devastation, but an explosion. She screamed. Loud, sharp, angry. The kind of scream that carries down hallways, through doors, across a lawn. The kind of scream that tells everyone within earshot that something has snapped. Staff members froze. Security outside stiffened. Even the neighbor's dog reportedly started barking. That's how disruptive the energy was. Meghan wasn't just angry. She was unraveling in real time. She grabbed Harry's jacket off the back of the couch and threw it across the room. She knocked over a glass of sparkling water on the counter. She slammed her hand against the kitchen island. She paced in circles, talking to herself, cursing under her breath, muttering things that would later send shockwaves through palace ears when repeated. How dare he? After everything I sacrificed. I made him relevant again. He still wants them. He still wants her. He'll never be free of them. I should have known. But it was the next line, the one that made staff exchange worried looks, that revealed the true nature of her emotional storm. If he goes back to them, he won't survive without me. Think about that sentence. Think about the contradiction woven into it, the threat and the insecurity fused into one single, devastating line. Meghan saw herself as Harry's anchor, his guide, his safety, his narrative protector, and yet, she also saw herself as the only thing standing between him and the destruction she believed awaited him in the UK. That contradiction, I am your protector, and I could also destroy you, lived inside her like a split identity fighting for dominance. The meltdown grew louder. She called his name out the front door. She shouted at the empty driveway. She cursed at the sky. She slammed the door shut again. And then, just as quickly as she erupted, she collapsed into a chair, breathing in uneven bursts, her mind racing faster than her emotions could keep up. Fear replaced rage. Tears replaced threats. The vulnerability she hated feeling crawled up her spine. What if he wasn't coming back? What if he'd reached his breaking point? What if he went somewhere he shouldn't? Or worse, somewhere dangerous? What if he was calling someone from the palace? What if he was calling Kate? The idea struck her like a knife between the ribs. What if, after all these years, after all the interviews, after all the conflicts, he was turning to Kate for comfort? The very woman the world constantly compared Meghan to. The very woman whose elegance, stability, and grace Meghan could never escape. What if Harry, needing emotional support, reached for something familiar, something safe, something royal? Then a darker thought creeped in. What if he wasn't calling her? What if he was with someone? A friend? A journalist? A family member? A former staff member? What if Harry was sharing everything she just said? Panic hit her like a wave. And that's when the meltdown shifted into a new gear. The dangerous one. Meghan grabbed her phone, hands trembling, and called Harry's number. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Still voicemail. Again. Still nothing. Each failed call injected another surge of adrenaline into her bloodstream. Panic hysteria began blending with paranoia. That's when she snapped at the staff member who cautiously approached the doorway to ask if everything was all right. Do not come in here. The staff froze. Another tried 5 minutes later, only to be met with a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Find him. Right now. But the staff couldn't find him. Security cameras showed him leaving through the side path, a blind spot leading toward a small hiking trail behind the property. He wasn't in his car. He wasn't on the main road. And the worst part? He didn't take a flashlight, water, wallet, or identification. Meghan's breathing grew ragged again. Then she made the call that would change everything. Not the call to William later, not the call that would be recorded and weaponized, but the call that happened right then, inside the meltdown, fueled entirely by fear and fury. Meghan called someone in Los Angeles, someone influential, someone connected, someone known for shaping narratives. And she began venting. Not strategically, not consciously, not thoughtfully, emotionally, viscerally, unfiltered. She said Harry was losing it. She said Harry was obsessed with Kate again. She said he was emotionally unstable. She hinted that he might be a danger to himself. She insinuated he was mentally fragile. She suggested he needed intervention. She created, without realizing it, the exact narrative that would later circle back and destroy the trust between them permanently. And because she was spiraling, she didn't see the danger in the words leaving her mouth. The person on the other end of the call, however, did. That call didn't stay in Los Angeles. It didn't stay in the United States. It didn't stay private. It traveled. And it traveled fast. Because Meghan didn't realize that person had ties to London. While Meghan was melting down in Montecito, Harry was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere she would never have predicted. Somewhere no one would have guessed. And his absence during those 11 hours didn't just create panic. It created suspicion, whispers, alternative theories, questions that Meghan did not have answers to. But even more concerning was the fact that Meghan's meltdown had shifted from emotional crisis to a performance for self-preservation. She began rewriting the narrative in real time, preparing excuses, crafting justifications, building a wall of explanations around herself to shield from future blame. He misunderstood. I didn't mean it like that. He took it out of context. He's projecting. He's spiraling. These became her talking points. Not because they were true, but because they gave her psychological cover. But here's the most chilling part. While Meghan was spiraling emotionally and verbally, someone else in the house, someone quiet, someone unnoticed, heard every word. And that person told someone else. And that someone else would eventually tell the palace. But before all of that unraveled, before the information circled back to William and Kate, before the narrative blew open into a scandal that would shake both sides of the Atlantic, Harry reappeared. But not at home, not alone, not with security, and not in the emotional state Meghan expected. He appeared with the one person, the absolute last person, Meghan would have wanted him to be with during those 11 hours. And that person knew secrets. Secrets about Harry. Secrets about Meghan. Secrets about their marriage. Secrets about what truly happened behind closed doors. And that person was about to change everything. Have you ever had a moment where you realize someone you thought you understood is living an entirely different life behind your back? Not an affair. Not a betrayal. Something even deeper, emotional intimacy with someone you never imagined they'd turn to. Because when Harry finally resurfaced after those 11 missing hours, he wasn't with a therapist. He wasn't with a friend from Montecito. And he wasn't walking alone, lost in his thoughts. He was with a person who carried a direct line into the royal family. Someone Meghan had always considered a quiet threat. Someone she never trusted. Someone she fought to keep out of their lives. Harry was with a former royal staff member. A person who had served the royal family for decades, long before Meghan entered the scene. Someone with history. Someone with knowledge. Someone who had seen the best and worst sides of the monarchy. Someone who understood Harry better than Meghan wanted to admit. This wasn't just any staffer. This was someone who had been close to Diana, who had witnessed the boys growing up, who had seen the fractures forming years before anyone outside the palace noticed. Harry trusted this person. Deeply. Too deeply, as far as Meghan was concerned. And that was the real betrayal in her eyes. Not the Instagram-like, not the secret account, not even the meltdown itself. It was the fact that in the moment of crisis, in the moment of emotional collapse, in the moment when he needed comfort and clarity, he didn't go to her. He didn't go to the woman he married, the woman he moved across the world for, the woman he defended publicly time after time. He went to someone she saw as a symbol of the life he was supposed to leave behind forever. Imagine being Meghan. Sitting in the house, spiraling, panicking, replaying the threat she made. Terrified Harry could expose her words, desperately trying to reframe the narrative before he came home. Only to learn he wasn't coming home at all. He was sitting in a quiet, unmarked Airbnb 2 neighborhoods away, drinking tea with a person Meghan believed to be an enemy in disguise. This staffer, let's call them the confidant, didn't reach out to Harry. Harry reached out to them. And that's what stunned everyone. When Harry left the house, he didn't wander aimlessly. He didn't just disappear into the night. He headed straight to the confidant's rented cottage, a place Harry had been before, a place he went to when he needed grounding, a place Meghan never knew existed. Now imagine being Meghan and learning that. But we're not there yet. Let's go back to that Airbnb first. Because the moment Harry stepped through the door, the confidant saw everything. The exhaustion, the panic, the sense of violation. The fear of the threat Meghan had thrown at him. The threat that wasn't metaphorical to him, but real enough to shake him to his core. For 11 hours, Harry sat in that quiet little room with someone who knew exactly how to pull the truth out of him, gently but firmly. He talked. He cried. He paced. He confessed. He talked about the burner account, the meltdown. He talked about years of feeling monitored. He talked about the tension in the marriage. He talked about the isolation. He talked about missing his brother. He talked about missing stability. But here's where the story shifts. During those hours, Harry said something he never expected to admit, not even to himself. I don't feel safe with her. Those 6 words, spoken quietly, with defeat rather than anger, would become the backbone of the storm that was about to hit. Because the confidant didn't let that sentence go. They probed. They pressed gently. They asked why. And Harry, exhausted and trembling, explained how Meghan's emotional swings had grown unpredictable, how arguments had escalated over small things, how he felt blamed for everything that went wrong, how privacy had turned into secrecy, how disagreements had turned into threats, how feels like he's walking on glass. The confidant listened carefully, mentally storing details. And then they asked the question that would send shockwaves across continents. Do you want me to tell William? Harry didn't answer. Not right away. Maybe not even consciously. But the silence that followed said more than any word could. Now here's the part Meghan would fear most. The confidant did reach out to London. Not immediately, but soon enough. And once London learned that Harry was missing, distressed, shaken, and fearing for his safety, things escalated quickly. But before that wave hit, something else happened in Montecito. Meghan made the phone call. Not the meltdown call to the Hollywood connection. This one came after. This call was darker, more calculated, more dangerous, fueled by panic, humiliation, and the realization that Harry wasn't responding. Meghan dialed a number in London. Someone she trusted. Someone she believed would help her get ahead of the story. Someone she needed to spin Harry's absence into something she could control. She was still in meltdown mode, emotional, frantic, impulsive. And her voice shook as she spoke, tears tangled in every word. He's spiraling. He left without warning. He's obsessed with Kate again. I think he's mentally unstable right now. He needs help before he hurts someone. You don't understand. He's not well. She painted him as fragile, unstable, unpredictable, a danger to himself and others. Meghan didn't realize that every word she said, every breath, every accusation, every frantic confession was being recorded. On the other end of the line was someone who protected their own interests, not hers. Someone who sensed that this call could become valuable. Someone who understood the power of keeping a recording of a duchess spitting out emotional poison about her own husband. Someone who knew that information is currency, especially royal information. That recording traveled fast, faster than Meghan could ever have imagined. Within 40 minutes, it reached someone inside Kensington Palace security. Within an hour, it was forwarded to a crisis assistant. And from there, to William. Imagine William sitting in an office, his phone buzzing with an urgent message, being told, "You need to hear this." Imagine him pressing play and hearing his sister-in-law describing his brother as mentally unstable, dangerous, obsessed with Kate. Imagine the rage, the betrayal, the disbelief, the protective instincts. William didn't hear a marital fight. He heard a threat to his family. He heard a smear campaign. He heard a warning that Harry was emotionally deteriorating. Except William knew his brother. He knew what sounded real and what sounded manufactured. He picked up the phone. "Where is Harry?" Back in Montecito, Meghan had no idea what kind of chain reaction she had triggered. She was pacing the hallway, anxiously checking the driveway every few minutes, sending Harry message after message, each more emotional than the last. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Come home. Harry, please. I didn't mean it. I'm scared. Just talk to me." The contradiction in those messages told the whole story. Anger mixed with fear, control mixed with vulnerability, threats mixed with pleas. And then William called her. She froze. She stared at the screen, horrified. She wasn't ready to speak to William. She wasn't ready to explain. She wasn't ready to be confronted by someone who saw straight through performance. She didn't answer, and that silence only made William more suspicious. Meanwhile, Harry was sitting in that Airbnb, exhausted, rubbing his face, trying to find clarity in a situation that had slipped out of control. The confidant poured him tea, sat across from him, and began asking the questions Meghan always avoided. "Are you happy? Do you trust her? Do you feel safe? Are you being honest with yourself?" These weren't accusations. They were reminders. Reminders of the man Harry once was before the weight of a new life, a new marriage, and a new identity crushed him into someone he no longer recognized. At some point around hour 7, the confidant's phone vibrated. A message from London. A recording attached. The confidant listened. Slowly, carefully. The color drained from their face. Then they turned to Harry with a look he had not seen in years, a look of heartbreak. "Harry, you need to hear this." And when Harry heard Meghan's voice, the panic, the accusations, the manipulation, the insinuation that he was unstable, he broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, devastatingly. The kind of break that happens when you finally see clearly and wish you didn't. He dropped his head into his hands. He whispered, "She's ruining me." And that was the moment everything shifted. That was the moment the confidant made a decision. Harry needed safety. Harry needed protection. Harry needed family. And so the confidant did something that would send Meghan into full-scale panic mode. They called the palace. Directly. Not through an assistant. Not through a liaison. Directly. The phone rang twice. A familiar voice answered, and the confidant said the words that officially turned a private marital meltdown into an international royal crisis. You need to come get him. Now. And that one call, sent from a tiny Airbnb, would soon ignite a chain reaction that Meghan would never be able to undo. Because the palace wasn't going to sit quietly. They were going to intervene. Directly. Forcefully. And whether Meghan was ready or not, the Windsors were coming. There are moments in a royal's life when duty forces reaction, not discussion. When instinct overrides protocol. When emotion smashes through decades of training. And when William received the call. The one informing him that Harry had vanished into the night, shaken, afraid, and seeking refuge with a former palace confidant. Something inside him snapped with a clarity he hadn't felt since the day he walked beside their mother's coffin. This wasn't politics. This wasn't scandal control. This wasn't a PR nightmare they could quietly spin into a softer narrative. This was his brother. His only sibling. His only link to the childhood they shared, the trauma they survived, the love that once guided them both. But it didn't stop there. Because alongside the call, the recording Meghan never intended for William to hear was already waiting in his inbox. A file. A voice message. A captured tirade filled with panic, accusation, and emotional volatility that no one in the palace could have predicted. Not even the ones who had watched Meghan Markle for years, analyzing her patterns, her strategies, her emotional reflexes. William played the recording alone, sitting in a dimly lit office room inside Adelaide Cottage. It was late. Everyone else was asleep. Only the blue glow of the screen illuminated his face. At first, he listened like a brother, then like someone assessing a threat, and then like a future king. Meghan's voice shook through the speakers. Frantic, brittle, layered with dread and venom. He's obsessed with her again. He's mentally unstable. He left without warning. He's not safe. He's not well. He could hurt himself. He could hurt someone. She wasn't calm. She wasn't measured. She wasn't controlled. She sounded unhinged. And every word, instead of painting Harry as unstable, painted Meghan as desperate. William clenched his jaw so tightly that his molars ached. What was she playing at? What was her endgame? What was she trying to set up? This wasn't concern. It was a smear. A preemptive narrative. A tactical strike. William had seen this kind of behavior before, not from Meghan, but from palace manipulators who weaponized emotion for advantage. Except this time, the weapon wasn't aimed at the institution. It was aimed at Harry. And then, as William listened again, letting the recording play through a second time, something hit him. Hard. One line. A line Meghan didn't mean literally, but one that carried explosive implications. He's obsessed with Kate again. William froze. His breath caught. His stomach tightened. Kate. Kate. His wife. The mother of his children. The person Meghan always compared herself to. The woman Meghan believed overshadowed her. The woman whose elegance, public composure, and quiet dignity Meghan had spent years trying, unsuccessfully, to outshine. What did Harry do? Why would Meghan make that accusation? Why bring Kate into it at all? William's mind raced. Not with shame. Not with defensiveness. But with anger. Sharp, heavy, protective anger. And that's when the palace assistant sent the final file. A screenshot. A digital trace from a temporary Instagram glitch. A like. Not from Harry's public account. Not from a verified profile. But from a burner account tied to his device. A like on a photo of Kate from the Royal Variety performance. William stared at the screenshot in disbelief. Not because Harry had liked a photo of Kate. That was the least of it. But because Meghan had treated that like as the spark of an emotional war. She twisted it into obsession, accusation, manipulation. She didn't say Harry missed the family. She didn't say he missed the structure. She didn't say he missed the life he left behind. She said he missed Kate. That wasn't an accident. That was calculated. That was targeted. And William realized something devastating. Meghan wasn't unraveling because of Harry. She was unraveling because of Kate. William stood up abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor. His pulse hammered. His breathing deepened. He walked across the room in tight, controlled circles, muttering to himself the way he did only when he was trying not to break something. His brother was missing. His wife's name was being weaponized. His sister-in-law was spiraling. and his family was once again being dragged into a storm they never asked for. But then came the part that cut him deeper than anything Meghan said. The confidence message. He's not safe. Harry wasn't at home. Harry wasn't responding. Harry was emotionally broken. Harry said he felt unsafe with Meghan. Harry had walked out after a threat that Meghan tried to spin into concern. William felt something cave inside his chest. He remembered a younger Harry, trembling after their mother died, terrified he'd be left alone. He remembered the nights Harry slept on his bedroom floor because he couldn't close his eyes without hearing the crash of paparazzi. He remembered the vows they made, as children, to always protect each other. And that was the moment William made a decision. He was going to intervene, not as a future king, not as a royal, not as a public figure, as a brother. But before he could act, before he could call security, before he could wake Kate and explain what was happening, his phone buzzed with a message that made him sit down again, stunned. It was from someone inside the palace, someone who had access to the recording, someone who understood the implications. Kate needs to hear this too. William hesitated. Kate had been fragile lately, recovering, rebuilding her strength, re-emerging into public life. The royal variety performance had been her triumphant return, and now this? But Kate was not someone who needed protection from truth. Kate was someone who confronted truth with a calm sturdiness that always amazed William. Kate had survived pressure Meghan could never imagine. Kate had navigated royal scrutiny at a level Meghan had only tasted. So he walked softly through the hall, entered their bedroom, and nudged her awake. "Darling, you need to hear something." Kate sat up slowly, adjusting her posture, taking a breath the way she always did before confronting something difficult. William handed her the phone. He didn't speak. He didn't prepare her. He didn't explain. He just pressed play. Kate listened without interruption. Her face didn't twist. Her eyebrows didn't rise. Her lips didn't curl. Her expression stayed surprisingly neutral, but neutral in the dangerous way, the way only someone who sees the full picture, the real picture, can stay. When it ended, Kate handed the phone back to William. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask why Meghan said those things. She didn't ask what the palace was going to do. She asked one question, a question that revealed everything about who Kate truly is: loyal, protective, intuitive. Where is Harry? Because Kate didn't hear jealousy. She didn't hear drama. She heard danger. She knew Harry. She understood trauma. She recognized patterns. And she understood something Meghan never did. Harry doesn't vanish unless he's emotionally overwhelmed at a level that threatens his stability. Kate looked at William with a calm intensity that made his breath stop. He's in trouble. We need to find him. William nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't hesitate. He already had palace security preparing to move. But here's the twist, the part that changed the entire trajectory of the night. The palace did something unprecedented. They requested Harry's phone data. The last pings, the Wi-Fi networks, the Bluetooth traces. And that's when they discovered something none of them expected. Harry had contacted the confidant. William's stomach dropped. Harry didn't run away. He ran toward someone. Someone safe. Someone familiar. And that someone had already informed the palace. William called the confidant's number immediately. The call connected after the first ring. No greeting. No small talk. Just a strained voice saying, "I have him." William closed his eyes in relief. Relief mixed with anger, fear, guilt, and responsibility. "Is he all right?" A pause. "He's shaken. Really shaken. He said he doesn't feel safe with her." William's fist clenched. And that's when he said the words that would begin the chain reaction. "Keep him there. I'm coming." But the confidant said something William never expected. "You're not the only one who's coming. Someone else already called." William's heart stopped. "Who?" The answer left him frozen. "Security from Montecito. They're trying to get to him first." Because Meghan had already realized he wasn't coming home. She had already begun panicking. She had already tried calling everyone. She had already activated her own version of crisis control. And she wanted to reach Harry before anyone else, especially before William. Because she knew something. If William reached Harry first, everything she feared would become reality. And here lies the cliffhanger. The moment that changes everything. William hung up the phone. He turned to Kate. And he said, "We need to move now. Because if Meghan gets to him first, we lose him." But what neither of them knew was this. Someone else was on their way too. Someone who wasn't supposed to be involved at all. and their arrival would erupt the situation into something far more explosive than anyone predicted. What does it look like when a woman who has endured 20 years of royal storms suddenly realizes the biggest one yet is forming, and it's coming straight for her family? It doesn't look like panic. It doesn't look like tears. It doesn't look like fear. It looks like stillness, the kind of stillness that only people who understand power can maintain. And Kate Middleton understood power better than almost anyone in the monarchy. When William told her, "If Meghan gets to him first, we lose him," Kate didn't ask what he meant. She already understood. She had watched Harry unravel for years. She had watched the rift widen. She had watched the marriage become the very opposite of what Harry needed. And when she heard the tremor in William's voice, something inside her clicked into place. Not anger, not jealousy, not insecurity. Protectiveness. For Harry. Because here's the truth no one says aloud. Harry wasn't just her brother-in-law. He was once one of her closest friends. The first person to make her laugh at royal events. The one who called her Kath, with a teasing grin. The one who always asked for her opinion before major speeches because he trusted her instinct more than his own. In those early years, before everything fell apart, Kate was the emotional bridge between the brothers. She understood Harry in a way William sometimes couldn't. She saw the cracks before they widened. She saw the loneliness he tried to hide. She saw the boy who lost his mother too young and never found a way to stop hurting. So when she learned he'd disappeared into the night, shaken, afraid, vulnerable, and convinced he wasn't safe in his own home, something inside her rose like a tidal wave. Not pity, not regret, resolve. Kate stood from the bed with a steadiness that startled even William. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She moved the way only someone who has faced public humiliation, invasive press coverage, health battles, and nonstop scrutiny can move. Calm, calculated, controlled. "Get the car," she said quietly. William blinked. "Kate, you don't need to." But Kate cut him off with a look he rarely saw. Sharp, piercing, almost icy in its clarity. "He's alone. He's scared. And Meghan is spiraling. We both know he shouldn't be dealing with her in this state." William felt a surge of emotion at her words. Gratitude mixed with awe. Because Kate wasn't thinking about optics. She wasn't thinking about press fallout. She wasn't thinking about reputation. She wasn't thinking about drama. She was thinking about Harry. As William rushed out to coordinate with security, Kate stood in the center of the room, breathing deeply, grounding herself. She slipped into a pair of fitted trousers, a soft jumper, a long coat. Practical, elegant, but meant for quick movement. The Kate Middleton the public sees. Poised, polished, immaculate, is only one side of her. The other side is far more formidable. The woman who endured a decade of being called Weighty Katie. The woman who handled near-relentless media cruelty with grace. The woman who held her family together through crisis after crisis. The woman who had learned to be steel-wrapped in silk. And on this night, the steel showed. But then something happened. The unexpected arrival hinted in the cliffhanger. As Kate stepped into the hallway, tightening her coat, checking her phone, preparing for what might become an international incident, she heard footsteps on the staircase. Slow, hesitant, heavy. She turned, and there stood the last person who should have been awake at this hour. Prince George. He wasn't a little boy anymore. Tall, thoughtful, his father's seriousness in his eyes and his mother's intuition in the shape of his face. But in that moment, he looked worried, vulnerable, concerned. "Is it Uncle Harry?" he asked softly. Kate froze. For a brief moment, her composure cracked, just slightly. She hadn't planned for this. William hadn't planned for it. No one expected one of the children to wake. But the tension in the house, the late calls, the whispers, the urgency, had stirred something in George. He sensed when something was wrong. He got that from her. Kate knelt down to meet his eyes. "Uncle Harry just needs a little help tonight," she said gently. "We're going to make sure he's all right." George swallowed. "Is he hurt?" "Not physically." "Is it Aunt Meghan?" Kate hesitated. This was the moment, the crossroads every parent dreads, where honesty and protection collide. She couldn't lie to him. Not fully. Not anymore. He was too old. Too perceptive. "Your uncle is just going through something difficult," she said carefully. "We need to support him. That's what family does." George nodded slowly, processing. "Will you be safe?" Kate felt her throat tighten. This child had lived through months of whispers about her health, through a hiatus from public life, through moments when the world held its breath waiting for updates. He feared losing her, deeply, and Kate knew she needed to soothe that fear without revealing the magnitude of what she and William were about to walk into. "Always," she said, brushing his hair back.